Welcome to Sykes, the Bottom Line Pharmacy Podcast, your regular dose of pharmacy CPA advice to fuel your bottom line, featuring pharmacists, key vendors, and other innovators.
Your checks, yes, you can call me, because we the best, Sykes and Company. We the best, Sykes and Company. Your accounting is a mess, there's no need for you to stress. Go online and request from the best. We the best, Sykes and Company. We the best, Sykes and Company, yes.
Welcome everyone to another episode of the Bottom Line Pharmacy Podcast. We've got myself, Austin Murray, doing the intro today. Tagging alongside here is Scotty Sykes with Sykes and Company, and then we've got Greco, who is the West Coast golfer from Live Oak Bank, and Jay Phipps over at Phipps Pharmacy. I'm going to talk about a couple of interesting topics today. I think the biggest one is just that pharmacy ownership mentality that I think, Greco, you and Scotty talked about that at ThoughtSpot, and Jay does a fantastic job at from his LinkedIn when he talks about the 100 days of conquering fear. So I guess let's just kind of take it from there.
Yeah, well, thanks, Austin. Appreciate you guys getting on as always. Appreciate our listeners out there. You mentioned having the right mindset. Well, the pharmacy gladiator, I mean, if that's not a winning mindset, I don't know what is. So, Jay, I'll start with you here and tell us a little bit about, I guess, the pharmacy gladiator. I'd love to learn more. I saw the website's very intriguing, but kind of expand on that and then your mindset as an owner and as you face the industry as it is today.
Well, first of all, thank you very much for having me on. Super excited about being here. The Pharmacy Gladiator really was born years ago, but in the late 19s, early 20s, I had some health conditions, really was told I'd be paralyzed from my neck down. And I decided either I was going to take on life or I was going to let life run me over. And so that's your two choices. And and so I've always been a little bit different than most pharmacists, a little more extroverted. When I decided I was going to pharmacy school, my advisor told me that I would be good for the profession of pharmacy. I was just a little different than most pharmacists. But I think for pharmacy owners, excuse me, I think for pharmacy owners, we're much more similar. We have that gladiator mindset. And 2 a.m, a few years ago, I woke up, woke my partner Daisy up and said, Pharmacy Gladiator, that's what the name needs to be. And she thought I was absolute nuts and she rolled over and went back to sleep. And I bought pharmacygladiator.com at 2 a.m. because I really thought that's what it is, because we really are battling for patients, battling for the profession, battling for our businesses. And I say often that we're conquering the coliseums in our community. So whether you're an independent practice or other practices, you're still really trying to battle for that. And that, I guess, personification has happened. You grow more into that gladiator mindset. And I think that's what makes pharmacy owners successful today, is having that mindset of willing to take on any challenge in front of us.
Daisy probably thought you were sleep talking. She was like, he's
She
probably
did.
just talking.
I'll be honest, my greatest ideas come at 2 a.m. I know we're going to talk about fear later, but Freedom for Fear Tour happened at 2 a.m. Same deal. It's always 2 a.m.
Go ahead, Scotty. No, you're good. I was just going to dive into what is freedom for fear. Go ahead and let's just unpack it. Let's start there.
Yeah, I'll be glad to. So like I said, maybe a year and a half ago, 2 a.m, I wake up and go, the first thing I thought was, we're in the fear pandemic. You think about like the way we live now, social media and the echo chambers that happen with that. It just drives that negativity, which really goes back to that pharmacy owner mentality. Is if you're not careful, you can easily be drawn into the negativity of everything that's happening in the profession or in our lives. And so I started, I really, from that moment, I stayed up the rest of the night thinking about, how do we address fear, and do we live in a fear pandemic? And there's stats out there that 90% of CEOs say that fear keeps their companies from innovating. 76% of people say that they feel stuck in their personal life, 75% in their professional life. So fear affects us in so many ways. And then I got, thinking, how do you overcome fear? Well, the science is action. The only way to overcome fear is through action. And interestingly enough, as I talk to people, you usually get, I'm only afraid of heights, or I'm only afraid of spiders, or, I'm afraid of sharks, or whatever kind of thing. But as you start to unpack that, what you realize is perfectionism, procrastination, avoidance of difficult conversations, they're all symptoms of fear. And it affects us in many ways. And, whether you're, calling a new client for banking or for your accounting firm, somebody that you're not sure if they're going to accept your business or do business with you. There's some people are affected by fear in that way, and you put things off. And a fear affects organizations, I think, much more than what we initially want to talk about. And so then I decided I would do the Freedom from Fear tour, and it's 100 fears in a year, and trying to do 2 social media videos a week, and done some interesting things, from parasailing to, I drove a Lamborghini GT at 178 miles an hour in Vegas. Only reason I went 178 is because the straightaway was just 0.3 of a mile long, and that's as fast as you could get the Lamborghini in a third of a mile. And so I've done things like that. Went to the skywalk at the Grand Canyon, where you're 4,000 feet above the floor of the Grand Canyon. Done my crappiest fear was I got my colonoscopy, one of those cancer fears, and power of attorney on my parents. I've hired people, I've fired people, had difficult conversations. And what I found is that every fear you conquer, you get better at other ones. So, doing things like driving fast and being in situations where you're anxious, then that helps you with those difficult conversations with staff members and how to handle those challenging situations every day.
Well,
Hey,
it builds
Jay.
character for sure. And Greco, you're in the banking business and buy, sell, and working with potential folks purchasing pharmacies. Character is a big piece of what you guys look at, right, from a lending institution.
Oh yeah, it's true. It's really big. I mean, we're in the business of partnering with people who aren't afraid of getting into the challenge of small business ownership, specifically in pharmacy. And I think something Jay was saying was so powerful when, there is the fear, right? So people overcome the fear of leaving their W-2 income job to either buy a pharmacy or start a pharmacy, or they own a pharmacy and they're going to expand into a new market. That's overcoming that fear. But then, I've always kind of wondered, once we finance the deal and it's done, we stay in contact with them, but there's always that day-to-day, right? And Jay, you were talking about how when you're seeing those negative reimbursements or maybe there's those day-to-day challenges and those fears, what are some of the things that you tell other pharmacy owners that you might connect with and mentor? How do you talk to them about little things to handle those day-to-day fears? Because they've already overcome one fear of becoming a small business owner, but then it's that other things that go on day to day that test that decision every day. What's some of the things you tell them?
Yeah, I think you got a great point too, because stepping out from behind, a W-2 is a big deal for people.
Yeah.
So if they've made that step, that's a big one. And I was at a pharmacy meeting a few weeks ago, and I had, excuse me, 2 people that come up back to back talking about they wanted to leave their W-2 income to start their own business. One was community pharmacy, one was looking to do consulting. So it's a big deal. So you're right. They should have, their fear muscle is built up at some point if you're going to do that. My point of view is I always step back from those negative little, what I call those, almost like those little ankle biting dogs, which is what those negative remits are. Sometimes they're there, and if you're not careful, you'll focus so much on the little that you're missing the big. We oftentimes, our amygdala is meant to find the bad stuff. Supposed to keep you safe from a saber-toothed tiger or a bear, lion, that kind of thing. And it doesn't know the difference between, oh no, I'm afraid what's going to happen in my pharmacy, versus a true bad, life or death situation happening. So the first thing I do is I step back from the situation. I try to get people to don't get caught up on one claim. Let's look at the global part of it. Also, don't ignore it. Oftentimes people just want to see that and they ignore it and they push behind and they want to go to the positive. And I think I'm an extremely positive person, but you don't want to ignore the negative. You want to look at it, examine it, use your data. We had an example on our leadership call this morning. We're doing a program through CPSN and getting paid to do things like MedSync and delivery and MTMs. So doing some great stuff. And some of our pharmacists had gotten caught up with, it's only a small percentage of our patients. So we pulled the data. They thought it was about 30% of our patients qualified. It was more like 70% of our patients qualified.
Wow.
Because they saw the negatives. They just saw the small percentage that didn't qualify. And so they got focused on those. So it's really about stepping back and looking at the data, relaxing a little bit and making sure you're not looking through it through rose-colored glasses or, dark gray-colored glasses, trying to find the negativity there.
One of my favorite quotes is from Tony Robbins, and he says, "What you focus on expands and eventually becomes your reality." So
Absolutely.
If you're focusing on that, that small percentage base, well, that's all you're going to think about. But then you miss this picture of that 70% of patients that actually do qualify.
Yeah.
And I
think that's really the case.
That's something that was, Scotty, Austin, Jay, we're all coming off of the trade show seasons, right? At all the major conferences and things. And there's always been those talks about some other things that people do. And I was just impressed at how many people were interested in learning more about those clinical services and ways that they can get the reimbursements. But I agree with you, Jay. When we were speaking to people, there was still that little bit of skepticism there. It was like, well, it's not going to be a big needle mover. But you bring up such a great point. You don't know it until you actually dive into it. And it's like stacking, right? It's like you're building and you're stacking, and all those little things, they stack to become something greater. So that's a great point. And that's definitely something we were seeing over the last couple of weeks here in the summertime, wrapping up those trade show seasons.
And Greco, we work with a lot of pharmacies, and we see hundreds of numbers every day. And the pharmacy owners who have the mindset, as Jay's discussing here, their numbers are different, and in a good way. It makes a difference. They have a different mindset, a different approach, a different way of handling their business. And it makes a difference in the bottom line, without a question.
Yeah. It kind of goes back to what you were talking about earlier, Scotty, about that character issue, character aspect of looking at people. I think that's what you have to have as an entrepreneur, right? Yeah, and a business owner. You have to be able to have that different mindset. And I think the purpose of these types of things that we're doing today is to more motivate people towards it, not call them out and say like, well, you're not doing it, I'm not good enough. Because I have, there's people in my company who I look up at and I go, man, those people are just like all stars. Like, I don't know if I'll ever be able to become that. But then instead you kind of look at it and like, well, they're more motivators for me, And so I hope people take this types of messages and try to work towards that mindset. Because Jay, you're a big inspiration in that way.
Well, thank you. Greco, one of the things you mentioned was really, you just want to do the little things. One of our core values at our pharmacy is to fail fast, which is a little contrary for most pharmacists. We're perfectionists, right? I say I'm a recovering perfectionist. We want to have everything exactly perfect, and that goes back to the right drug, right patient, right dose, right doc.
Yeah.
It goes back to that. That's what the pharmacy attracts. But I think for sure in independent practice, you said a word which to me is extremely important, and I didn't know until a few years ago, which is an entrepreneur. There's sometimes a difference between being a business owner and an entrepreneur. And I was I went back at age 50 and got my MBA from Indiana, and I didn't own the word entrepreneur till I got there, and I started thinking, really, I'm not. Business owners own a business. Entrepreneurs are innovating and trying new things and experimenting. And it really changed. I don't know that I was already doing those things, it added a new fire. It was a new fuel to that business owner mentality. And I think those that are doing good, the great things now are trying to innovate and don't try to make it perfect. Try to get it out there, test it, see if it works. And then if it works, you can add to it. If it doesn't work, it's okay. Let's go to the next project. Because what worked for me may not work for everybody, and what worked for the next person may not work for me. But you have to try it to see if it works in your business to see how successful you can be with it.
Jay, we've had a few guests on this summer talking about culture and team development and things like that. How does kind of your approach here factor into your team and your culture and kind of getting your team on the same page as you are?
Yeah, that's a great question. We have a very different culture. Not everybody fits in with our team. We've hired people and they just don't fit. Our core values are different than most. One of the questions is it's a black or white hire or not hire is how much you like change. If you're not on we have them rank themselves from 0 to 100. If you're below 50, you won't fit with our organization, and it's okay. You're going to fit somewhere else. We do a lot of things that are different in our culture. We talk about having a gladiator culture. It's really that being that battle, going to battle for our patients and our business. And we do things like we have a Phipps Pharmacy Forum every spring or late winter, early spring, where on a Saturday afternoon we got about 45 team members and we get them all together and have presentations. And this year we did Phipps Tank. So we took a little piece off of Shark Tank and had each team present an idea for a new business program, improved service. We had some judges there, and the interesting thing is they tried to ask me ideas, and I wouldn't give them. I had them people email me their slide deck, and I deleted it before I read it because I didn't want to go in biased. And what I saw was, when you give people authority and empower them to make decisions, and then they do some phenomenal things. And so the other thing we did with that is we said that everybody had to participate on their team, and if we implemented their team in the next 6 months, we would give them a bonus for their idea. So we financially incentivized them, and I'm telling you, they blew us out of the water. Like their ideas, from changing the pharmacy labels to doing welcome packs for our people that have Phipps pack. I mean, there was some great things, and what we also saw with that is like technicians took the lead, and they really accelerated their leadership. And we're going to do that every year now. I mean, it's phenomenal. But we've done a forum since 2020, and to add the Phipps tank to it was really good. We're getting ready for Phippsapalooza, which is our company picnic, for lack of a better word. In August, we'll do a Christmas party. We also do quarterly Phipps Pharmacy Family, PHAMILY, family meetings on a quarterly basis where we get everybody together. So, and that allows us to meet. It's by teams, but we make sure that everybody goes into their location. So we're really trying to build that communication, build that culture. And one more thing we do for culture is, which I think is unique, we have a pit crew. Talking about racing cars earlier. I'm driving to ThoughtSpot 3 years ago, and I'm like, pit crew, that's it. And again, Daisy looks at me like I've lost my mind. She says, what? And I was like, well, you can't run a NASCAR team without a pit crew, and you can't run a pharmacy without a pharmacy implementation team, a pit crew. So it's basically our senior technicians that meet on a weekly basis, and because they're the ones that are doing the work. I may come up with a crazy idea, and then they're the ones that go put it to work. So we do I think things differently than a lot. Try to base it on science. Everything from the hiring process, which involves everybody on the team, technicians, interview technicians, because they have a better insight on sometimes than the pharmacists do. So really, it's that building that culture, and that, I'll be honest, that's been painful at times, growing the culture, because when you realize people don't fit, we've gotten better with the hiring as that's went on to make sure we're getting the right people on our team. And it's been, I think we are much more productive, providing better patient care and financially doing better with the people on our team now with this culture and the ways that we're running things at this point.
That sounds like an awesome culture. I'm going to steal the Phipps tank. I wrote that down right away. I was like,
Yeah, I saw the pen come out. Yeah, it really is a great idea. It was just one of those off the wall kind of things, but it really, and I'll tell you, so I know pharmacists, they're going to say, my team will never do that. Oh, they're not going to work. They're not going to participate. Right. I mean, I've been around enough pharmacists to know, and you can be it can be in your accounting firm. It can be at Greco's bank, right? You don't have to be, pharmacy can be in anything. But we had one, I'll tell you a story. Our Jackson location brought in, they had everybody on the team on the floor. They had this little monkey that cried like a baby, and one of the people were pretending to be a patient, and it's over there just crying, and and it's all the chaos that goes on in a pharmacy, and they were imitating it and talking about how challenging it is to communicate with patients with all that chaos going on. I mean, they played full out. And if you can get them, if you'll just get out of their way, give them the rules, my experience is they'll bring you more than you expect.
That's something that's, you're talking about something that I think is often overlooked in business, that transfer between business ownership to entrepreneurship. Because, when we're talking to loan candidates or we're talking to ownership candidates, we can, and we're guilty in this as a bank, and Scotty, I'm sure as accounting firm, we can start to talk about so much of the numbers, the metrics, the margins, the this, that, people's credit, whatever it might be. Do they have the down payment? Is the structure right? But sometimes we forget that, that team building, that ability to build a culture, that ability to lead, create ways to get the whole entire staff involved is a skill in itself and is equal as important as having the right gross profit, having the right, net profit, having all these plans. And that's something that, Jay, I'm glad you brought that up, because every so often when we're going through the cycles every quarter of doing deals for people and talking to owners, that's such a great thing to bring back to the top of mind about how are they at managing people, at creating fun ways to get the team involved and building that culture in the small business, because big businesses do it all the time. I mean, big companies like Google and Apple, I mean, they're like, they hang their hats on that. I know here at Live Oak Bank, we hang our hat at the Live Oak Bank culture tremendously. And so it's a great reminder.
Well, yeah. And like I mentioned, Greco, you see a difference in the numbers. So it does go hand in hand. One client comes to mind, he runs about 6% payroll as a percent of revenue. And everybody's like, well, how the heck do you do that? And it's like, well, he's very, very, workflow efficient, but his team loves working there, and they love the culture he's built and the way he rewards his team and everything. They love it. So, they're cranking out work, and they, and you wouldn't hear any of them say they're overworked. It's just they know what they're doing and they love doing it. So, that kind of just points to culture right there, how he does it.
Yeah.
Greco, one gap I've seen in pharmacy teams that you kind of alluded to, like what Apple does and Google does and at Live Oak that you do to build cultures, is sometimes we don't invest in it, right? I mean, sometimes pharmacies don't invest in it. One of the interesting thing is, if I have a group of 150, 200, 300 people, whatever, when I give presentations, I'll ask, how many of you have a coach? And like nobody raises their hand, right? Outside of your thoughts, if you're a Syncora person, you may have their business coach or they're your wholesaler. But how many people have an executive coach or a coach about their business? And almost nobody does. Now, interestingly enough, the follow-up question will be, how many people have children? Keep your hand up. If you have children and you have hired them a dance coach, singing coach, football coach, baseball coach, gymnastic coach, and almost every one of them that have a child have their hand up, right? So they invest in their children, which probably are never going to make money at whatever you're working at, but you don't invest in your multi-million-dollar business, which I find very intriguing. My oldest is 21. He's been very active in lots of sports. He's an Eagle Scout. won a national championship on shooting sports, playing college football now, baseball, and played, baseball, played soccer, done tons of was on plays, did all kinds of things. Still, the only thing that he might have ever made money on was he's a senior in college, so he's making a little bit of money playing Division I football. But it's still a minutia compared to how much I invested in him as a person. But then we won't invest in our businesses the same way that we do our children. I think that's a gap in a lot of pharmacies that we really think, well, it costs so much to have a consultant come in, or a leadership coach or team builder, but then they don't think about what that can do to the bottom line, as Scotty was talking about.
Well, Scotty, we were joking about that. We were chatting about golf games, and I was telling you, man, I'm playing the best I ever played. And he's like, "What changed?" I go, "I hired a coach. I got a coach to help me." So you're absolutely right. I mean, we just overlooked that. I mean, it's critical. It's a great point, Jay. I mean, you're absolutely right, man. I mean, you're spot on.
Nail on the head with that one. That's right.
Yeah. Jay, I want to go back to, you were talking a little bit about culture, and something that I've seen a couple of pharmacies do. I know Vince and John Bellitti over at HB Pharmacy do this, is they get a lot of their team members involved in PBM reform and pharmacy advocacy. Are you incorporating any of that over at Phipps Pharmacy?
We do, especially on the state level. My team has been extremely involved. We've been successful in Tennessee with PBM reform, expansion of Practice Act. Our team has been good about getting involved, sending letters, making calls, that kind of thing. And I'll be candid, last year we were working on scope expansion. So pharmacists in Tennessee now can prescribe for COVID and flu. We can do Narcan, inhalers, EpiPen. We can do several things. And I incentivized my staff to reach out. We did a drawing. If everybody that had somebody else contact their legislator, I think we asked for 3 people. If you have 3 people contact your legislator and you tell me that you did and you did it yourself, I think we did a drawing for $100. So so incentive, it's worth $100 to have. I don't remember the number now, but it was like 250 calls to legislators in Tennessee because I offered a $100 drawing. It's really simple. Some of them would have done it anyway, but it's worth investing in that. And so it's really, and now we get questions about what's going on now. The team's more involved and interested, but really because we incentivized to get them involved in the past, then they stay more involved and ask, hey, what's going on? They're also watching reimbursements, and they're looking at them, they're seeing the claim value, the real net reimbursement there. So a lot of times they'll be asking, what can we do about this? And that's a great way to incorporate them into the federal legislation, which, as you know, has been much more challenging than state legislation to get passed. Again, I'm an optimist, but it's gonna happen. I'm optimistic that happens before the end of the year, but we just have to remain relentless to make sure we continue to push it and not give up. After some near finish line, goal line stands in the last couple of years, but our team has to be involved to get it across the finish line.
$100 small price to pay to get all that.
Exactly.
Jay, do you find two questions, I guess, for you? Do you find that because you've been getting the staff more engaged, that individuals that maybe didn't understand the financial challenges and how tight it can be in the pharmacy, have you found that those individuals now are more aware and maybe even change their actions just even outside of getting advocacy? And then the next question would be, what is some of the most critical points that need to get addressed in the advocacy? Because from, when we look at pharmacy financials, and Scotty, you do too, we can see, and I think it's becoming even more prevalent now, the differences in some of the state to state type action. So, do you mind talking on those 2 points?
Oh, absolutely not. To your first question, yes, the more that people understand, the more open they are to making change. Because a lot of times they think, well, Jay is just complaining about the bottom line, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or owner X is, the more they understand the benefits of advocacy and they see the numbers, I think transparency is important in that mindset when they start to look at that. And it does help them be more involved. And you do see them changing what they do. And do we need extra staff, or do we, need to stock this drug or a group of drugs or whatever it is? They're a lot more open to those things. They're also more open to new ideas, for me to bring in ideas, or for them, more importantly, for them to bring in ideas and innovate. That's one thing I try to get my leadership team to do is, if I'm the only one coming with the good ideas, we're going to fail. Like, we need everybody innovating, everybody to be thinking. In our leadership team, we have now a 10-minute session where one of the pharmacy directors or people on the leadership team do a Phipps pharmacy focus, and it's talking about changing an area or adding an area, trying for them to make us more profitable, really, and how do we provide for our patients. I think that goes back to what they've learned from the advocacy standpoint.
Hmm.
And then, what was the second question? Sorry.
Just like, what are some of there's a lot
the biggest challenges, right?
Yeah. Well, what are like 2 or 3 points that I think we all hear this, we all hear some of the things, but in your opinion, what are the ones that are really critical that make that move the needle the most?
Yeah, I'm a believer, number one, that all politics are local. So if people need to make change on a local level, that's where the biggest impact can make. In Tennessee, I was Tennessee Pharmacists Association president-elect when we passed our first PBM bill, and which gives us if you fill less than 65,000 scripts a year, you get a mandatory dispensing fee of $13.67 for commercial claims. So think about that.
That's big.
So NADAC plus $13.67 is pretty reasonable reimbursement, and so we did that on the local level. It unfortunately hurt the higher volume pharmacies. They didn't get the addition. So we're going to go back and try to address that this year and try to get that incorporated for everybody. That was just a negotiation thing, but that scope expansion, or that increase in reimbursements, really has helped pharmacy, especially the smaller pharmacy.
Yeah.
It's also caused innovation. It's caused people to look at, is doing long-term care at home and expanding those services, which we get better reimbursement for. Do you do that because different MPIs are reported for the script volume? So do you have a GeriMed, for example, account and take care of patients by packaging them? Because that helps you in multiple ways. You get better reimbursement. It also may get you below that 65,000 count. If you're doing 300 a day, you can pull some of that off. From a national level, I think the biggest thing is Medicaid managed care. We need to get rid of spread pricing and Medicaid. That doesn't affect us in Tennessee, but it does for lots of people, our colleagues across the country. So I think that's one of the big things. And then reasonable and relevant terms for Medicare. To me, from my business, that's the number one thing. If I could have one thing, it would be reasonable and relevant terms where we're getting paid on the Medicare claims at a rate that was reasonable and relevant. And now that's not been defined. That was reintroduced by Buddy Carter. Interesting, I think there was 12 total that introduced the PBM Reform Act. Buddy Carter, Diana Harshbarger, the champions that we know. Also had Derek Tran, which is a pharmacy owner in California now, on the Democrat side. So it's a bipartisan bill. So if we can get that, that'll get Medicaid, spread pricing and reimbursement, and the Medicare reasonable and relevant. To me, that's the big package. I think if we can get that done, get that implemented, I think it will be a game changer for pharmacies.
Yeah, I saw Chuck Grassley today tweet something about PBM reform has to get done this year.
So I was lucky enough to give a presentation at ThoughtSpot with Jessica Satterfield and Katie Krell from NCPA's legislative team. I was the cheerleader and they were the fact giver, I guess, is the way it came down. And really consistently, all the leaders in the House and Senate have said we need to get PBM reform done. It's a priority. So it's keep talking about it. We just need to continue to keep pressure on them, main relentless, to make sure they get it done so it doesn't get lost again. Because it does, but there's so much interest in it. It needs to. I can't imagine it not happening if it doesn't happen now. I don't want to be negative, but I would hate to say it may not ever happen because it's so much momentum at this point. But what we don't need to do is just assume we're going to win. You don't want to be that highly favored person on Saturday afternoon with a football game and then some underdog beats you because you're not prepared. We still need to continue to be prepared and show up and see your legislators. August is a great month for people to have pharmacy visits because the legislators, congressmen and senators are off. So it's a great time to get them in the pharmacy, show them what the reimbursement is. I did that last year. A state representative came in, and he was actually there for another reason. And I got him behind the counter and started showing him reimbursements, and he couldn't believe on the Medicare side what the reimbursement was. And I've had my congressman in. It's really just about building a relationship with them. They're regular people. People don't realize that. It's really just about building a relationship. They want to know who you are, and show up to their events. They love to shake babies and kiss hands, as I say. They want to be out there meeting you because pharmacists have so much impact on their constituents.
Well, as a pharmacy owner, you got to be in advocacy. That's the way it is.
Yeah, absolutely. 100%.
Be a pharmacy owner, you better be advocate.
And then it's really built for, it's interesting as things go by, the more you touch base and with them and then, where our local political party is having a fundraiser in a few weeks, and they were reaching out to asking everybody who had phone numbers. And, I had multiple congressmen's cell phone numbers to let them in my district, not just my district, but in the state, because I meet with them and you chat with them enough and they'll share it. They don't really mind as long as you don't hound them all the time. And you really do need to be really involved, and they want that. If you're not going to be involved, though, what is it? If you're not at the table, you're on the menu. And so you really have to be that advocate for the profession. And so many people think that it's overwhelming. They don't want to get involved. They won't care. I think one of the things we need to do is we simplify it, where pharmacists already are motivators, educators, and storytellers, right? That's what we do. We talk to, we educate people about their drugs. We motivate them to take their insulin right or check their blood sugar. Then we tell stories to get that done. It's the same thing for legislators. We really just need to do that, be simple, remember I think that talking to legislators is just like talking to a new parent that needs an antibiotic for their baby. They show up, and pharmacists should not talk about the mechanism of action and pharmacokinetics and pharmacodynamics, right? All those things that make all your eyes got big when I said that. Because you don't know what that is. You talk about, hey, this is how you take it. This is how you store it. It's going to make, your little baby get better. And that's the same thing with legislators. They come in, you don't need to get into all these weeds. You need to really simplify and be simple with the message and act like you're just talking to a patient and be very succinct about it. And most of the time you can get the message across.
Good point. Well, guys, I guess we're coming up on 40 minutes here, Austin.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, we certainly appreciate Greco, Jay, you guys hopping on, sharing some insights. Of course, pharmacygladiator.com. Is that what that is, Jay? I believe that's right.
Yep, pharmacygladiator.com. That is correct. And,
very interesting.
I appreciate
backstory there. And but no, we appreciate you guys getting on today.
Well, thank you very much for having me.
Yeah, thanks,
Absolutely.
guys. This has been great. This has really been a fun one to be a part of. And Jay, thanks a lot for all your insight. Thanks for everything you do for the industry. And Scotty and Austin, same thing. Thanks for creating a platform like this for people to hear motivational things and then also hear, how much those types of things play into someone like from the bank, what we look at. I don't know if many people get to kind of get the curtain pulled back. So that's a lot. It's really important. So thanks, guys, for having me on.
Yes, thank you, Greco.
Absolutely.
And we will see you guys on the next one.
Yes.